What I really looked at when we talk about not only Philadelphia, but the nation is where do we stand in terms of police brutality? And what has happened is that the Supreme Court has become the major arbiter of what is brutality. And in that, they have really gutted the Fourth Amendment. When we come into contact with the police and they just walk up to you, just a little conversation, that does not fall under Fourth Amendment protection. They're just talking to you. The Fourth Amendment does not come into account until you are detained. Most Black people don't know, do I have rights? Am I protected? And they're going to react in certain kinds of ways. And that's when they get hurt.
Or city managers and other leaders within the city.
Hey, family. Welcome to another episode of the Black Man's Roundtable. I'm so glad to be in Black History Month. And on today's episode, we have a wonderful treat for you in this Black History Month of February. She has been on this podcast before, around about this time last year. And she was on to talk about Black revolts and that we've had over the years on land and water everywhere. And since she's been on, I've talked a lot on this platform about how we were not just these docile people. And Dr. Williams is the one who really motivated me to kind of start saying that, is to start talking about, how we were not these docile people that's been here since before 1619. So, but with that, she's here on this episode for a different reason. Some may say somewhat related, I guess, but more modern day stuff. And anyway, she's on here on our Black author series, and she wrote a wonderful book that even when she was on the very first time about a year ago, I told her, Dr. Williams, we have to get you back on here to talk about this wonderful book. So the book has been out for over a year, but it is still a riveting book, and she's going to talk about it, and she's going to break this book down. And so with that, I am going to give you a bio of her. I had to narrow this thing down to about 4 paragraphs because she's done so much in her life. Dr. Ife Williams is an Africologist, an expert in the historical and present experiences of Africans and African descendants throughout the diaspora. She holds a bachelor's degree from Lincoln University, a master's degree in American government, and a doctorate in political science from Clark Atlanta University back in 1988. Her manuscript, which is what we're going to talk about today, Police Brutality, a Philadelphia Story, was published by Lexington Press in 2023. This city has had a long history of indifference towards and violation of Black bodies through overzealous street-level enforcement and sweeps, culminating in the 1985 bombing of a back-to-nature group housed in a Black community. The work's central theme is redress from brutalization, as the absence of consistent punitive punishment of the perpetrators is the sanction and a badge of slavery. Dr. Ife's teaching career spans 3 decades and a number of institutions: Dillard University, University of Illinois, Savannah State University, Clark Atlanta University, Delaware County Community College, and Cheyenne University. Courses taught include African politics, Black politics, African American history, Black philosophy, international relations, international organizations, public administration, comparative politics, and Caribbean studies. Most recently, she received a Mellon ACLS Community College Faculty Fellowship for enhancement of digital map on African and African descendants resistance against enslavement, building upon decades of scholarship on slavery, bringing the stories of revolts from across the globe into an interactive digital modality. Dr. Williams, welcome back to the Black Man's Roundtable podcast. How you been doing, sister?
Thank you. Thank you. Just great.
Great. Look, I know that was long, and but like I wanted the people to know that I had to make it shorter. But look, we're going to jump right into, because this is going to be an episode that I think is going to grasp even though we've been seeing. When I say we, I'm talking about us melanated folks, Black people. We have been seeing police brutality a lot. It is starting to, go into some other communities right now as of late. But I know that this episode is going to grasp and hold some of our most loyal followers. So look, let's jump right into it. And I'm going to open this up with asking you the inspiration. What was the inspiration for you writing this manuscript?
Yeah, thank you very much. That's a good question. Actually, I grew up in Philadelphia. And when I was in high school, I must have been around 17 years old, a young man was shot in the middle of the afternoon, in the middle of City Hall courtyard. He was handcuffed, getting off a sheriff's bus to be taken into City Hall for his trial. And nothing was done. It just disappeared. And at the time, I wasn't really political. I mean, I was just in high school. And I mean, there was a lot of things going on, but I wasn't interested in anything. But that incident stayed with me and just haunted me for years. So by the time I made it to Clark Atlanta University, and I had to select a dissertation topic, it was clear to me: police brutality in Philadelphia. And Philadelphia is such an interesting city. I mean, of course, Black people have been brutalized all over, but I think Philadelphia is pretty unique in that it was one of the first cities to organize Black people around police brutality. In 1918, they organized what they called the Colored Protective Association, and they issued little cards. So when you got harassed by the police, you would show the police your card to say that you had the backing of CPA if you were taken to court. Also in the 1960s, Philly was the first city to have a civilian review board. Of course, later it would be dismantled in the 70s, but we were the forerunners. And just lately, we decided to reinstitute a civilian review board. Of course, people heard about MOVE and the bombing that took place, but even that has a long history. And of course, everybody knows Mumia Abu-Jamal. Their stories go back to the 1960s. And what's interesting also about Philadelphia is that many of the police officers here grew up with Mumia, right, around the same time. So they had this relationship going. This was very antagonistic, but it was a relationship of sorts that bring us into the present moment. So my concern was not so much to document brutality. I mean, we all know that.
Right.
Many authors have rooted the brutality, of course, in slavery, coming out of the slave experience. What I look at is redress. What can we do? What are the limitations of our power? How can we control the police? And again, Philadelphia is very unique. We had 2 Supreme Court cases coming out of this city trying to restrain the police, trying to get an injunction, trying to stop them from brutalizing people. Okay. Also, we had a very colorful mayor, Mayor Rizzo, and I don't know if you saw during Black Lives Matter, they took down his statue.
Yes. I heard way more about that man than I need to know.
I know. So all of those, all of together, I just think it's just such a ripe case study
Yeah.
of redress against police brutality.
Okay. If when we talk about progress, it's been a while, obviously, since you've done your research and you've done your work for this manuscript. I guess what I want you to talk about is, has Philadelphia shown any just meaningful progress, or any cycles of reform, or even regression since your work?
Well, of course, there has been some progress. One major area of dispute was filing complaints against the police.
Yeah. You,
And up until the 1970s, you actually had to go into a police station
mhm,
and tell who was ever on duty what happened and give them the information and the officer's badge number and their name. So that went nowhere. So of course, 2026 and with technology, that whole process has been updated. They have it in a number of languages. You can just go online. You don't have to go to the police station. You can write what happened. You can do audio, and it goes right to the police department. Now, the other side of that, in terms of accountability, I don't think too much has been done. A major problem, not only Philadelphia, but most cities have, is the Fraternal Order of Police. And they're not technically a union, they're an association.
yes.
And their major job is to keep their officers employed, right? And to justify and legitimate anything their officers have done. And they just do a good job of it. We have our former commissioner, Chuck Ramsey, fired 230 police officers. 230. The FOP restored all of them.
Wow.
All of them. Okay. And these are people who we call repeat offenders. And I was thinking today about ICE having the mask on.
Right.
In the 60s and 70s, people would do posters, wanted posters with the police's face on them
Wow.
and distribute them throughout the community because they were repeat offenders. And what I found was that it really is a small percentage of police officers, and this is
Hmm.
across the board, who are just really not only just racist, just beyond the call of whatever they think they're supposed to be doing, which discolors everybody else. But their records, and even today, do not reflect their activities over a period of time. Just looks at that. So I'm saying it's up and down. Yes, of course, we're in a new era, so you will see some progress in terms of
Right.
brutality, but I don't know with ICE.
One of the things I was kind of not surprised, but just kind of taken aback by what you just said when you talked about, in the 70s and all of that, how you had to go into the police stations and stuff. Well, most of the time people talk about today how service and stuff has gotten worse because of the lack of interpersonal
Mm,
relationships and stuff. But you kind of said the opposite. At least the way I think I heard it is that it was worse to have to go in the police station,
right,
and give that face to face and that interpersonal contact, that it's better now to just do it without any
right,
interpersonal. Did I hear you correctly with that?
right, because the police are so
Wow.
intimidating.
Wow.
Yeah, I mean, they're very intimidating. I saw a study, it's very interesting, that Black people are afraid of the police regardless of socioeconomic level.
When I saw that video, I saw and I looked in George Floyd's face. I didn't just see George Floyd. I saw my father's face. I saw my uncle's face. My brothers, my cousins, my friends. I saw my own face. I saw how easily I could have been in that situation, and the people I cared about could have been in that situation. You have to have that talk with black children, because police officers in this country, the only defense they need is that I felt like my life was in danger. I felt threatened. When my dad was stopped, I could sense the fear in him, a fear that I've never sensed in the man who was protecting me and my family my whole life. That fear transferred onto me in that moment, and it's honestly never left me.
Yeah, we have that deep fear. So you're talking about, and then the person on the desk rotates. So you don't know who you're talking to. That could be that officer's partner, okay, somebody they know, but could be the officer themselves who committed the act. So you didn't want to go and the move used to have a saying. You walk into a police precinct standing up, and you come out laying down.
Yeah.
And it was real for them. I mean, it was ridiculous in the 70s. I'm going on, but they were arrested anywhere between 100 and 500 times as a group. You talk about excessive bail. All their rights were thrown out the window. But anyway, coming back, it was a real fear of dealing with the police. Of course, move is kind of the exception, but it was true for the majority of Black people. What I really looked at when we talk about not only Philadelphia but the nation is, where do we stand in terms of police brutality? And what has happened is that the Supreme Court has become the major arbiter of what is brutality. And in that, they have really gutted the Fourth Amendment search and seizure. One author said they had erased, RACED, the Fourth Amendment. When we come into contact with the police and they just walk up to you, how are you? Just a little conversation. That does not fall under Fourth Amendment protection. They're just talking to you. The Fourth Amendment does not come into account until you are detained, right? But let's go back. When are people brutalized? That point of contact. Right. And again, dealing with the fear, most Black people don't know, do I have rights? Am I protected? And they're going to react in certain kinds of ways. And that's when they get hurt. And that's not that's not covered. And what the Supreme Court has said, yes, you are free to not be brutalized by the police. However, that is not a constitutional right. That's not to be brutalized is not a violation of your rights. Okay? Because what you have a recourse. You have recourse. You can take the officer to court, Section 133, try to sue them, whatever. But the onus is on you to prove that you have been emotionally or mentally harmed. Right? So the Fourth Amendment, we really do not have any protection. It becomes their word against ours. And with this, I like what the kids call all these police shows, propaganda.
Propaganda. That's a good one.
Yeah, the Supreme Court looks at this split second decision,
right,
kind of theory. And they're like, well, you have to give the police officers leeway. They have to decide. And they do not see what excessive force really is. They can't determine that. And they have not set up any type of guidelines for that. They just do it by case. And then lastly, this in this equal society, they look at the individual officer as being racist and not the institution of policing itself. So we are really at a disadvantage in terms of using the court. And it's not funny, but I was laughing today about this whole racial profiling thing,
Hmm.
especially with ICE. And the Supreme Court has upheld racial profiling.
Yes,
Yes, you
yes, they
can
have.
use race if it's not the only reason that you're stopping someone. Okay, so by ignoring the whole issue of racial profiling, the court has normalized it. Okay,
Yep.
and it gets worse. If you get stopped by the police and you have a bench warrant, which a lot of people have and don't even know, you forfeit any Fourth Amendment protections on the spot. You can be taken in. They can take your DNA. They can hold you. They can detain you, and you just give up any rights that you have. So, in terms of progress, I don't see where we as a people are really progressing. And we've really looked at the federal government to kind of protect us in this area. And of course, what we're looking at now is a major, major setback with ICE.
So a lot of these so-called reforms seem to be more symbolic than they are, actual policy that's going to help the folks. But what I would like you to talk about a little bit too, that something that confuses a lot of people when it comes down to police protection. In other words, not police protecting the citizens, but police protection, the protections of, police being protected within, and that is qualified immunity. Now, it is, to me, what has happened and what the Supreme Court has given seems to be more just total immunity than it is qualified immunity. But can you talk about qualified immunity and how it, I don't know, I guess the pros and cons, how do they need it? Because people are confused. Do cops really need the qualified immunity? If so, why? And how does that benefit them and hurt us, and vice versa?
Well, when we talk about qualified immunity, we usually think about the police, but we have to look at it in a wider sense.
Okay.
Anybody working for the government has some type of qualified immunity. So you go into the Social Security office and you're trying to deal with one of the workers there, gets out of hand, you start yelling at them, maybe try to put your hands on them or whatever. They have to have immunity. They're trying to do their job, and here you are coming in, attacking them. So, to an extent, all of these federal workers, state workers have to be protected from the public
Okay.
in some sense. And then that's where the police fall in. What happens again, it comes back to that split second thing, is that the police can't always determine what's going to happen in a situation or how they're going to respond, right? So the whole notion of immunity is to protect them really from frivolous cases. Just citizens just coming up and accusing them of something that they didn't do
Right.
or how they did it. But because of the number of cases of police brutality, that it has grown in a sense where it not only protects them from frivolous cases, it actually protects them from actions
Actual.
that they say and discharging their duty, right? And one thing about police officers, and I don't want to offend any of your listeners, they lie. Oh my God. And we really seeing this with ICE. The way they have a story and then we get 2 videos after that and it throws the whole story out. They've come up with all kinds of stories. So this has brought this whole notion of qualified immunity
Exactly.
to another level. Do they really need qualified immunity? Yes and no. In some cases, yes, they do need to be protected. New York is one of the first cities that is they are going to make the officers pay, okay, when the city gets sued. And this is the only way we're going to get around this.
Exactly.
Is that because these officers they'll do anything and they don't care because it comes out of taxpayers' money. Yeah, the money that Philadelphia has spent. Oh no, Los Angeles. Oh my God, millions of dollars.
LAPD. Good Jesus.
Yes, in
Yeah.
unlawful suits. So the question with qualified immunity is, yes, workers should be protected to a certain extent. However, if they violate the law, they overreach their powers, then qualified immunity has to have limits, and then they have to be responsible financially. That's the only way we're going to get around that.
Yeah. I've never understood why why cops are not held at a higher standard than civilians, and it's just weird
Right.
to me. It's like, so they get away with breaking the law more because they are officers of the law. It's just never really made a whole lot of sense to me. But it is what it is. But I want to kind of switch a little bit to some of in your work, in doing this work, in the psychological effects. What are some of the psychological effects that you have seen, that you have witnessed, or that you have uncovered that has affected the communities there in Philadelphia with police brutality?
That's a good question. I think when we look at the 60s, late 60s, 70s, you see more of a psychological impact on the community than you do today. I think today we're not as unified. There's a lot more going on. But during that time, especially the 70s, you had a number of organizations that pulled together, and they were really combating police brutality as if they were in a war. Okay, they weren't playing. And I mentioned that first Supreme Court case that was brought up. That was started by the community, and people were terrified, especially under Rizzo. The police were constantly terrorizing their communities. So you're talking about fear. People were very fearful, and people were not protected. Oh, we had a lot of violence by whites on black, especially black students.
Yeah.
The whites would come and they would attack. So I mean, even parents, what are you thinking? You send your child to school and they're being beat up, and the police aren't protecting them. So during that time, they were very much emotionally, mentally, and psychologically impacted by the brutalization, and especially sitting back and watching the police not do anything. Right? At one case in 1963, a police officer got the call to Oregon that a robbery had taken place.
Okay.
So he just drives up and he sees a guy running. So what does he do? He takes out his gun, he shoots the guy. Then he shoots again, misses the guy, kills somebody else, kills a woman. And then when the mother of the woman found out that her daughter was killed, she has a heart attack and she dies.
Wow.
So that's 3 people. He didn't have the right area, the right person, anything. And this officer, I mean, it caused a major uproar in the community. And what happened? The officer was not only exonerated, but he was promoted. What does this do to you?
Exactly.
And it's interesting that you say psychologically, because after Black Lives Matter, I don't know about Atlanta, but in Philadelphia, we had the National Guard come in.
Right.
And they were posted throughout our community. And I could say for myself, when I drove down 52nd Street and I saw all these National Guards standing there with their guns and the tanks. Rodney, I cried.
Wow.
I mean, I've never seen anything like that in my life. You were in a war zone, and
Yep.
it was just our community. So after that, part of the reparations or redress, one organization called Bread and Roses, they've been around for a long time. They were able to get $500,000 to administer therapy Black residents living on 52nd Street. So you talk about
Yeah.
psychological impact and addressing. I don't know in terms of follow-up how many people actually took advantage of the therapy,
Hmm.
but it was definitely it definitely changed our community for the worse.
Yeah, and
Mhm.
since you kind of hit on it a little bit with the basically the militarization of these local police forces, well, what I can tell you as a military veteran, as a combat veteran, um, is that it is one of the most despicable. When I tell you that we, those of us who actually served in uniform, those of us who actually, and I know in this case it was the National Guard, so they are,
Right.
you know, not local police, but I'm going to get to them in a minute. But they have militarized local police. They have militarized ICE and all of these police so-called, agencies. And what I can tell you is that the overwhelming majority of military veterans, and especially combat veterans, we despise it. We
Mhm.
absolutely cannot stand it. And I have never ran into that face to face with these militarized police forces and police units or sections, SWAT, all that stuff. I've never encountered that. But what I can tell you is that if I ever did, um, I would just shake my head at them and maybe show them a picture or something of, you don't want this. You just think
Oh,
you want this. You want, paramilitary and military is two different things. Now, the National Guard, and like you're saying, people don't realize the amount of the psychological effects just seeing these semi-automatic weapons and tanks and
right,
stuff that it'll have on the
right.
civilian population. Now, I know what they're trying to get out of it, and they are succeeding, but it just shouldn't be. And like you said, that's why I'm not surprised that when you said that you cried when you saw that, because it's deeply emotional to see
Yes,
that in your on your streets.
it
So
is.
yeah, yeah. So it's definitely something. But I want to kind of go in, not totally in reverse, but in reverse just a little bit. And I want to talk about, we talked a little bit about reforms and meaningful or not meaningful, symbolic and that
Mhm.
kind of thing. Um, before we jump completely off of that, I wanted to ask, have there been any reforms meaningful that, again, that you have seen that maybe someone like
Mhm.
myself cannot really see that, hey, this was a good thing? I mean, from they've brought in cameras and body cams and all this stuff, which I
Mhm.
knew wasn't going to
Mhm.
do a whole lot of good. But are there, or at least in whatever. But anyway, I'll let you talk about it. Are there any reforms since your work again that you
Mhm.
have seen that you say, yes, this was a good thing, or this was simply symbolic?
Right. Well, I always say we cannot underestimate the power of Black Lives Matter.
Okay, you did speak on that a little bit, I think.
It really was wonderful.
Yes.
What was missing was that organizational strength that could
Okay.
sustain them into the present moment. But within that time, a lot of reforms were proposed. Uh, One thing locally, Philadelphia, city decided to come out of what they called the 1033 program, which meant that they would take military armaments, so-called surplus, into the
Right.
city, and they stopped doing that. However, now with ICE and the big beautiful bill, those police units who agree to work with ICE can get military arms again. So in Philadelphia, Philadelphia hasn't signed on yet, but this is what we call Pennsylvania.
Yeah.
And a lot of the surrounding areas have signed on to ICE to get some of that money. There were a number of reforms nationally that were proposed
Okay.
that just didn't follow through, like getting rid of the chokehold. A lot of cities got, technically, and Philadelphia's one, said, no, okay, we're no longer going to do the chokehold. However, now they have a cartoid hold. Just the same thing, they just changed the name. All right. Of course, with Sandra Bland and others, they start looking at entry and make sure that you have probable cause to go in. However, now, if you have reasonable suspicion, which has a lower threshold, you don't technically need a warrant, or you can get one that's like so it's like this. I had a professor at Clark Atlanta University used to always say about the Supreme Court and about policy. It's like a dance. What do they call boots down? Two steps up, you got two steps up, two steps back, side to side, So that's what these proposals are looking like, because a lot of these proposals came out during Black Lives Matter, but they did not have the congressional support to be pushed through to become law. Okay.
Right.
And again, with on a federal level, we had programs which would go into cities to assist the police. That's been wiped out by our current president.
Right.
And so again, it's really back and forth with these reforms. Meaningful. I think the best thing that came out is that people are more aware. And the thing with the Black community, this is historical. We've always been teetering with this thing of criminalization, because we buy into the racism. I mean,
Yep.
because we hear everything else, that Black people are criminals. Most Black people have been victims of crime or know someone who has been victimized by crime. And then you have these predators on the Black community. So where do you stand? I mean, even Ida B. Wells, Du Bois, they would do research, and sometimes in them trying to research and get ideas, they kind of legitimated this whole criminalization idea, became part of the culture. Yeah. But I think now Black people are more aware
Yeah.
of what's going on, and that's the best thing that has come out of this.
Yeah, and not falling for the okie doke like
Right.
back in the day with the three strikes you're out thing, and under I think Bill Clinton, because I guess it kind of started with under Reagan and kind of worked its
Right.
way, but at the end of the day, it was Black people, especially older, middle-aged or older Black women, who were really, all over the wanting for the three strikes you're out.
Right.
And so here you are, you did these things, the government purposely did things in the Black community to where there was now so much crime that those Black grandmothers and those Black aunties, like, yeah, three strikes, lock them up. But
Yeah.
not even realizing, like you're saying, what happened and how it happened. But now I think the community is more engaged and more aware of what the government is doing than they were back then. But yeah, you are right when you say that a lot of it was us
Yeah.
who wanted the police involved, not even realizing that it was a setup.
I know Michael Dyson talks about, he's so funny. He says, I don't know what you're talking about. Black people love the police. He said Saturday night, Pookie's on the phone calling. You come over here and get these Negroes.
We'll call the police in a minute.
In a minute. What are you talking about? I don't hate the police.
Yeah. That is true. And
Yeah, it's
but
funny,
yeah,
but
yeah,
it's true.
he is.
Right, right.
It
Yeah,
is
so we're
true.
kind of caught in the middle here.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So
Okay.
let's talk about lessons. Of course, your work focused on Philadelphia, but of course, like we talked about before, in pre-production, is that there are this work can apply to
Mm-hmm.
any city in America
Right.
that is, a metropolitan area, or anything outside of a small town, but any medium and large size city can relate to the things that are in this work that you've done. But what are some of the lessons that other cities can learn from Philadelphia, from your work, and from Philadelphia's history with
Mm-hmm.
bad policing?
Right. That's funny. I had a chapter in an earlier version of this book called "Lessons for Gates from Rizzo," and I did a comparison between what happened in Philadelphia and, of course, the Rodney King incident. And everybody's thinking now, okay, we have cameras, but those were two incidents. In Philadelphia, it was Delbert Africa, one of the MOVE people, who was beaten by the police, and it was caught on camera. And of course, we have the um, Rodney King, and
Right.
and I think the lesson is history. We need to know this isn't new. The same thing happened in both cases. You have the all-white jury, we have demonization of the victim. Again, we talk about Black people's response. Oh, yep, they must have done it. And
Yep.
the tricks the courts play, the role of the police. Oh, I don't know how they can conjure up tears so fast when they get on the witness stand. How scared they were and what
Yeah.
happened, and it's funny, in Philadelphia, they imported an all-white jury in the police case, the police officers that beat up Delbert Africa. They imported them.
Wow.
So, yeah, so it's history. These things have been happening throughout our history here in America. And it's just so unnecessary. It is, I mean, this could have been squashed 1850. We could, you know,
Yeah.
but it's perpetuating, it's getting worse. And I was thinking today, in the 70s, we used to say, remember the book, The Choice by Samuel Yet? It talked
Yes.
about the genocide.
Genocide.
And
Yep.
we used to say, yeah, those detention camps where they put the Japanese, they're still up. I don't know if they're still up or not. I have to look at Google Earth. And we're like, we're next. And it's interesting, Black people are saying that now. Okay, yes, the Mexicans, Venezuelans now, Africans, Caribbeans. Who's next?
Yep.
Who's going to be brought into this? But we need to seriously take a look at our history
Yeah.
and what has happened to us as a people. And we need to garner ourselves up for the future.
Absolutely. And,
Hmm.
here of late, of course, you've spoken of ICE a few times um, since we've been talking. And I think as of late, people have really revisited. There's been a lot of
Yeah,
revisits back to the origin of the American police in slave catching and that kind of thing, because the purpose, even modern day police, their primary purpose is to, protect property
right.
at the end of the day. And sometimes you have to protect property against people, And so what I'm saying is that there has, because of ICE and the way that they have moved from covering themselves, like it's reminiscent of the KKK. People, talk about the way that they are sitting outside of schools, outside of places
It's
where
horrible.
they know that parents are going. And so it is kind of conjured up the conversation about the origin of
Right.
policing in America and the slave catcher. What do you think about that, Dr. Williams?
Yeah. Uh, it's horrible. And I was looking at an article today about why ICE wear masks. and what it does for them. And the argument is given that it's to protect them. Well, then protect their families from recognition. Well, I mean, this is a democracy. You're supposed to be transparent. We're supposed to be able to see you. Our politicians, we see their faces. Why can't we see yours? But what it does is by them wearing the mask, it allows them to act with impunity.
Exactly.
They can do whatever they want, when they want it. And we're looking at their actions have been despicable, and very few of them are being held accountable. And now it's going to be even worse because local police officials are now being deputized to assist the ICE people. So we have officers, I can just speak for Philadelphia. We have a number of what we call repeat offenders who are still on the force. We know these people have committed crimes against persons, and they have all types of attitudes. We had a case in Philadelphia where the police officers had a Facebook page, and on their Facebook page, they were talking about people and other kinds of people and how they don't like them. And
I think I remember hearing something
you
about
remember
that or
that case?
reading something.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes. And then they said, well, it's our personal space. It's our right. We can have this. So, I mean, this is the thinking here. And also the other people who are, at least the police officers have some training, but the ICE people that they're just bringing in, they're not getting that. They're not getting trained. Look how fast they're coming around. How fast those numbers have
Got
increased.
their 47 days because of 47 president or whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. And somebody made an interesting point. What happened to all those demonstrations by the Proud Boys and others? Notice we haven't had any.
Yep.
Because now they're ICE people.
Yep.
They just enlisted. So we have these people are very, very dangerous, and they're being protected by federal law. You mentioned qualified immunity. It's going to be another level of litigation in terms of holding these people accountable. And all they're basically using really is racial profiling.
Yep.
Right. And now now you're going after people from Africa and the Caribbean. I mean, what's the difference? I mean, everybody says I look like I'm from Swaziland. I mean, like we're next. And unfortunately, some people, believe, well, this is America. These things aren't going to happen. This is a democracy. But what we have to understand is, what is a democracy? People, we have freedom of speech, freedom of rights. No, what we have is a mechanism for redress. Doesn't mean that we have rights. And as long as we have some type of institutional format to have our rights addressed, then it's a democracy. So your right to privacy and speech, all of that is fleeting in this era. Right.
Yeah.
And people just have, when they say woke, we have to wake up and see what's happening. We need to organize. And I don't think we should wait for ICE to come for us.
Exactly.
We need to prepare ourselves. I know here in Philadelphia, the city held a number of community forums on what to do when ICE comes to town. How to protect yourself, your rights, and what you're supposed to do. But I don't think it was widespread enough. And truly, Philadelphia is not Minnesota. I really don't think that we're taking this thing seriously. And we're not about to get out there to protect, to fight for the rights of somebody else. I don't think so. Not here. So we need to really educate ourselves and take this thing very, very seriously.
Yes.
Mhm.
I too think that there's a false sense of security in our community. Um, and I have nothing against the the ADOS brothers and sisters. I have nothing against the FBA, the Foundational Black Brothers and Sisters as well. In fact, I plan on bringing people from both those groups right here on my platform. I want to talk to them. I don't just, you know, excuse what they think and what they believe, but I do believe that there is a false sense of security that we were born here. And there's a false sense of security that we have about the 13th, 14th, 15th Amendments that I know from going around this world, um, that I understand how fragile democracy is. And I understand that the more melanin you have in a lot of these colonized countries, um, straight up, you're if you're not the first, then you're the last to go, but you're gonna go. And I just think there's a false sense of security, Dr. Williams, when it comes down to our people and
Me
what
too.
can and cannot happen to us and what we're looking at. And I understand some of the frustration with the brown folks, if you will, voting about 50% or so, or very close to 50% for Donald Trump. And it's like, okay, they effed around and found out. And I got that. I understand every bit of that. But we have to, I think, also understand that at the end of the day, we are the main entree. We are the specialty that's on the menu. We are what they really go after on that plate. And so
Mhm.
I just think that we have to just keep that in mind. And I think that
Mhm.
some of us are just, and I understand the false sense, the sense of security, because they've made you believe that, but
Right.
it's just not the case. Um, but while we're talking still about reform a little bit, is that if, should the reform, because we had the whole thing with defund the police, a couple of years back and all of that, especially during COVID and stuff. um should it focus on training? Should it, because some people will say you can't train racism out of folks, and you can't. But should reform focus on training? Should it focus on funding? Should it focus
Um,
on oversight? I know you
um,
talked about some of the things that's happening in Philadelphia
right.
with police oversight, or just like structural redesign.
A structural redesign. I think all of the above. Angela Davis has this whole campaign, just defund the police. And they make a good argument about the criminal justice system and how it needs to be reformed, and within that, the police and what policing should be done. And if the criminal justice system is reformed, the need for the type of policing that we have would change. You know, but it's going to be a bottom up job. Yeah, you can't
Mm,
really
yeah,
get rid of racism, especially when you're dealing with people who do not believe they are racist. You know,
right.
you in Philly, we had in the 70s major training of the police, racial sensitivity along with the community. And the white police officers just did not want to participate. They thought it was crazy. They're not racist. And they went right out and committed all types of acts. So it really needs to be an all around job. I was kind of in this area a little disappointed with President Obama because I mean he couldn't do everything,
Right.
but he funded the police more than any other president up until now. Put more money into them and to the existing structure without questioning the structure, without making any demands when he could have, you know. But I don't know, as long as we have I was trying to find something on TV today. Every other station was a crime station, murder.
Oh yeah.
Somebody jumping out of a plane and killing somebody. As long as we have all this propaganda, all this criminal, it's going to be very difficult to justify any type of reform and to convince the population at large that we need reform of the police and of the criminal justice system. But
Yeah.
something definitely has to be done. You just can't keep filling up these places.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the media is a huge part of it,
Right.
like you're saying, and they would think the local news and even the nightly news, they would make you think that America is just running rampant with crime, and like you
Right.
saying, every other station, everything you turned to was just a bunch of crazy stuff going on as far as as far as crime. But it's just not the case.
Right.
Most people don't even witness. Most people go an entire year without witnessing any type of serious, what would be deemed a serious crime at
Right.
all. It just doesn't happen. And so, but
Right.
it helps. It's the whole, like you talked about a little bit earlier, it's the whole fear factor of it all. And so you have these folks just sitting around thinking that, everything is just going stark crazy. And then when I talk to those folks, I'll ask them, like, when the last time you seen any kind of major crime? And the answer is always, it's been a minute. It's always some minor something that some cousin did or whatever. And it's like, are you really? But yeah, they get it from the media, and it's really
Right.
sad. But
It
it's
is.
yeah, it's by design, and so it's just really, it's really sad. If before I get ready to close it out, is because in our community there's a lot of trust of the federal government.
Mhm.
And do you think that, well, I guess that trust has kind of been eroding over the last few years, especially over the last year, but do you think that there are any, I think you spoke about it a little bit earlier, but do you think that there's any federal oversight, or how federal oversight can play a positive role in policing today?
Right. Well, yes, the last couple of months things have changed, but the Civil Rights Office was moving ahead. I think I mentioned consent decrees
I
with
think you did. Yeah.
cities, right? And they have had positive results, especially in places like New Orleans,
Okay.
where the federal government has gone in, they've done some training, worked with the police, going through some of their records, helped them out, and the number of cases of brutality did decrease. Uh, the officers there became more accountable, but a lot of those decrees, of course, were you penned it under Trump. The second thing is federal funding, and now with us, if the federal government withheld money from
Yeah.
these units and looking at their records. Other thing is oversight. We don't really have a national oversight of the
Right.
police, right? Each police unit provides data voluntarily.
Yep.
So we don't know, and this is a big problem, and the police know this. You'll have an officer that gets fired from one unit and he'll just go to the
Yep.
next county or whatever and be hired again because there's no database with this information in
Yep.
there. So we need and a strong database that's not really dependent on voluntarily submitting information. We need to go in and get that information. One thing that Black Lives Matter is still doing, part of their structure, is going in and creating databases of many communities and watching some of these officers and looking for repeat offenders, looking for money that's spent and uh, different trends. So this needs to be done on a national level so we know what we're dealing with. We don't have that, right? Also, what is probable cause. What is reasonable suspicion? Yeah, we need some guidelines. There are no national guidelines. It becomes a case by case situation. And this is something that the officers should know. And one thing former police commissioner Ramsey would say is that the police officers should know the law. They really should know the law. He calls it constitutional policing. They have no idea. Talk Fourth, Fifth Amendment. What? When New York decided to make officers responsible for paying cases and qualified immunity, I just did like a straw poll. It wasn't really an academic poll that
Right.
that was sanctioned. I just went to New York and asked a couple of officers. None of them knew anything about it. Some of them didn't even know what qualified immunity was. And I said, "Don't you know
I'm not
you have to pay
surprised.
you have to pay yourself?" And they're like, "What are you talking about?" And this was a little about a couple of months after they started doing this. So yeah, so the police officers they need to be trained. They need to know, and they need to have some type of relationship with the community. This is another thing that we're doing in Philadelphia, which I don't think the new police recruits like, is they're being put in the community
Hmm.
and walking the beat and getting to know the people who live in the community, talking to people and getting rid of that us versus them type of mentality. And that needs to be done more and more. But now we're going to
Yeah.
mass.
Yep. For every one step forward, two steps backwards.
I tell you,
So,
boots on the ground.
yep, that part. And last, I want you to talk to the listeners, talk to the followers here of the Roundtable on how can just ordinary citizens, like the folks who are watching this today, how can ordinary citizens support meaningful reform?
That's a good question. But in every city, I know it's not just Philadelphia. I know in
Right.
Atlanta, you have groups, you have organizations
Hmm.
in existence, you have individuals who are pushing for police accountability. I know last year you had a big thing with the police setting up the police city
Yeah. Yes.
and a
Cop
lot of
City.
Cop City, right?
Yeah.
And a lot of groups came out, a lot of people came out against that and organize it. And so, what the community can do is to support some of their efforts. You know, I guess when we have these community talks about the
So some
police,
of these
we need to,
grassroots
right, we
groups
have to
support them. Okay.
support our grassroots and not just even though in every movement, okay, you only have a small population who actually does the work,
Yep.
right?
That's
And
true.
everybody else kind of sits back. Well, now what we're up against, more of us need to commit ourselves and to support some of these work, even even if it means giving them a couple of dollars, do
Yeah.
something. Go to one of their forums, post on your Facebook page when they're having a community meeting, even if you're not going. Hey, let me just put this on here. Maybe some other folk need to know about this and be informed. And also we have to talk to some of our young people.
Yeah.
You know, I'm thinking Cornell West is the best. We have a group of young people that are arrogant in their ignorance. And these are his words, but they really don't understand what they're up against.
Yeah.
And they need
That's
to
the beauty of
they
youth.
need to talk. A very learned scholar at Georgetown University, Paul Butler, did a book called Chokehold. Okay.
Yep.
And in his book, he says, what you should do is shut the F up. I'm like, oh, that's your directive. All your years of education, this is what you're telling people? Yes, this is what you do when you're stopped by the police. Just shut up. We need to explain how dangerous the situation is, and once they get in the system, They're marked for life. They really are. So I mean, so there are a lot of things we need to take our heads out the sand and know what America is really standing for presently.
Yeah. Well, as we say a lot, history may not repeat itself, but it definitely rhymes, and we need to really understand the origin of policing in America,
Right.
how police has evolved, and then we realize how much it hasn't really changed that much at
Right.
all since its conception or since its origin and what it meant here in America. So, but look, Dr. Williams, it was a pleasure, as it was the very first time we had you on about a year ago.
Thank you.
When we had you on for your work on the slave revolts. I enjoyed that a lot, just as well as I enjoyed having you to get back on to talk about police brutality, because so goes what happens in Philadelphia is the same thing that's happening all across America.
Right.
So but look, I know that you're out there doing more work. We talked about it with your slave revolt work that you've been doing to shine a spotlight on all of that. And I think that anyway, what I'm saying is that can't wait to get you back on to talk
Thank you.
about, yes, to get the update part 2, if you will. That's what we're going to end up calling it, part 2
Part
of
2.
your very first interview on
It
the
is part 2.
slave revolts and everything. And so I think that is something that especially our youth really need to hear, because there's been so many pictures and all that stuff painted, and not to go so far into that, about, you know, this docility, or about just black folks being just docile, these enslaved people being docile. And it was just not the truth. I never even thought that before. I mean, I knew something. I knew quite a bit about different revolts, and not just Bacon's Rebellion and that kind of thing.
Right.
I knew more than your average person about it, but I did not know as much as I learned, you know, about it when we had you on. So I just want to just highlight that one more time and let the folks know who are familiar, and the folks who've seen you, especially our loyal followers, they like, I seen her. Oh, she was on that first one. I just want for them to know that you'll be coming back, and that you've been doing more work in that area on slave revolts to expand it. And we talked about it, and thank goodness that your work wasn't affected, you know, because we know your work was at the Smithsonian, and thank goodness it wasn't affected, you know, by some of this current BS that's going on now. So, but with that, Dr. Williams, let the folks know how they can get a hold of this book.
Yes, Amazon.com.
Yes.
And right now, well, it was published by Lexington Press. That has been bought up by Bloomsbury, and they're having a sale right now, 40% off.
I saw that earlier today.
Yeah, so you can just go to Amazon.com and put in Police Brutality, a Philadelphia Stories. This is just one story because it depends on who you're talking to.
Yeah.
And get the ebook or the regular book. You can go to my website, drifewilliams.com, one word, and order the book from there. And there's some videos. We talked about Tulsa earlier. Did a lot of work on Tulsa during a year.
I really encourage folks to go to your website. There's a lot of information on the website. Yes.
And then of course, the slave revolts map is on blacks.org. One word, blackslaverevolts.org. And you'll see 2 maps, slave revolts and then resistance up until 1994. And I can be emailed at drifewilliams@gmail.com, one word. And I love to hear from some of your listeners.
Yes, ma'am, and I believe you will. They are usually very engaged, especially they are usually very engaged. So I know that you will hear from them, and hopefully even and look, the people go out there and leave 5-star reviews on Amazon and wherever you go and you get the book. Leave good reviews, because that stuff get in the algorithms and it really helps out with everything. So anyway, Dr. Ife Williams, again, a pleasure having you on. Cannot wait to have you back on. You have, and I'm letting the audience know that you have agreed to be a contributor on these subjects
Yeah.
to the Black Man's Roundtable. So when we reach out, if you're available, you have agreed that yes, you will come on and bring your expertise, even if it's 5 or 10 minutes, just to let the folks know what's happening and what's going on. So I appreciate that.
Oh, I'd love to.
Absolutely, I appreciate you doing that with us. And so with that, catch the Black Man's Roundtable podcast the third Thursday of the month. Also catch the Black Man's Roundtable with Rodney and Rodney the second Thursday of the month. And the BMR's Local Lookout with Rodney and Bobby the first Thursday of the month. All episodes drop at 7 p.m. Eastern Time. Until next time, we'll see you in them suites and them streets. Peace. Hey, family. If you like what you saw, visit our website at blackmansroundtable.com for more information or to check out more content. Until next time, we'll see you in them suites and them streets. Peace.
Read something educational for you. Woke up to the sound of the struggle, echoes loud in the street. Generations of pain in the rhythm, blood and tears in the beat. From the corners to the courtrooms, we decipher the code. Every word that we speak is a chapter, every step is a road. They try to silence the story, rewrite the pages in gold. But the truth don't need no filter, the truth don't need no hope.
This is the anthem, the voice of the unheard. Standing tall in the fire, speaking life with each word. From the roots to the branches, we rise through the pain. Black Man's Roundtable, we're breaking the chain.
Microphone in my hand like a weapon, wisdom passed down through the ages. Every topic we tackle, every fight on these stages. They say we're too loud when we whisper, too proud when we kneel. But the power in our voices is the power that's real.
This is the anthem, the voice of the unheard. Standing tall in the fire, speaking life with each word. From the roots to the branches, we rise to the pain. Black Man's Roundtable, we're breaking the chain. This is the anthem, the voice of the unheard. Standing tall in the fire, speaking life with each word. On the roots to the branches, we rise through the pain. Black Man's Roundtable, we're breaking the chains.
Unapologetically black. We'll see you in them suites and them streets where we're flipping tables like Jesus.
We're breaking the chains.